It may have happened to you too. You're walking into a room, everything is normal, and then boom! You say something weird, trip over your own foot, or wave at someone who wasn't waving at you. 2 seconds passed, but your brain? For days, weeks, even years, it replays that scene over and over and over again. Why does this happen? Why does our brain hold on to embarrassing moments like they're the most important memories of our life? And most importantly, how can we stop overthinking them so we can finally move on? In this videocast, we're gonna break it down with simple psychology. No complicated terms, just real explanations that actually make sense.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're talking about that moment when you are completely relaxed, maybe driving, maybe trying to fall asleep, and your brain decides it's the perfect time to replay that one deeply embarrassing memory from 6 years ago.
Oh, yes.
You didn't ask for it, but there it is. The time you waved at someone who wasn't waving at you? Or, I don't know, the time you called your boss mom?
The full body cringe hits you. It's totally involuntary. Your pulse quickens. You might even flush, and you think, why is this moment still so fresh?
Right.
I can recall the exact shade of the carpet, but I can't tell you the names of the last 3 people I spoke to.
That is the core question for this deep dive. Why does the brain treat moments of social failure, the tripping, the minor miscommunication, the public slip-up, as fundamentally more important?
Yeah, more important than stuff we actually need to remember.
Exactly. Why is the cringe memory saved with maximum priority?
The quick answer is that from an evolutionary standpoint, your brain interprets acute embarrassment as a serious social threat. It treats it like a 5-alarm fire.
A social alarm. So our mission today is to break down that alarm system. We need to look at the exact chemical mechanisms, the hormonal rush, and the mental shortcuts that ensure those awkward moments are not just stored.
But stored with extra permanent clarity.
Let's start with the immediate neurological reaction then. The brain's emergency protocol when that social failure registers.
Right.
Tell us about the key players.
Okay, so we have to begin with the amygdala. Think of it as a tiny, almond-shaped smoke detector deep inside the temporal lobe.
A smoke detector, I like that.
Its primary job is processing intense emotions, particularly fear, threat, and crucially for us, shame. When you realize you've committed a social faux pas, the amygdala it activates instantly. It's the initial alarm bell.
But why does saying something awkward in a meeting register the same way as, say, being chased by a predator? That feels like a massive overreaction for just a typo or a misstep.
That's a great question, and it really speaks to our deep history. For early humans, social rejection or public failure was an existential threat.
Meaning, if you were kicked out of the tribe.
You were unlikely to survive. Our brain hasn't fully updated that operating system, so when embarrassment hits, the amygdala tags it as a severe threat to social standing, which the brain kind of equates to survival.
So it's not just a feeling, it's a critical warning.
Precisely. The amygdala immediately relays this urgent signal to the neighboring hippocampus, which is the brain's central memory formation unit.
Okay.
And the message is crystal clear. Warning, danger detected. This highly emotional event must be stored accurately for future reference.
And how do the stress hormones fit in here? Is that why our face gets hot and our heart pounds?
That physical reaction is the system flooding itself with chemicals, primarily adrenaline and cortisol. These are stress hormones, and their presence during memory formation is incredibly powerful.
So they basically supercharge the connection.
They do. They act like a biological, high-speed internet connection between the amygdala and the hippocampus.
And they intensify the storage process.
Exactly. Those stress chemicals force the brain to hyperfocus, storing the moment with exceptional detail. Think of them putting a massive permanent bookmark on that memory.
Oh, bookmark.
Yeah, and brain studies consistently show that this tight communication between the amygdala and the hippocampus ensures that emotionally charged moments aren't just saved, they're essentially laminated and recalled with extra power later on.
That explains the initial intensity. But if the brain is focusing so hard, why don't we remember all the details? Why is it only the face of the person who laughed or the exact spot where we dropped the tray?
Yes.
This brings us to memory selectivity. and the idea of emotional hotspots.
This is where we get into more technical but really fascinating territory. Psychologist Mara Mather and her colleagues have done critical work here. They talk about what I call the GAIN model.
GAIN. Okay, let's define that acronym because it sounds like it's the key to this whole selective memory thing.
It is. GAIN stands for Globally Accessible Non-Selective Encoding.
Globally accessible, non-selective.
Right. This is what normally happens. When you're just taking in a scene, your brain encodes all the details, that's the global access, without really selecting specific things to focus on. So non-selective. It's like a wide-angle lens capture.
Got it. So Joan is the background noise in normal memory setting.
Right. But when intense emotion is introduced by the amygdala, the game changes. Chemicals like norepinephrine, which is linked closely to adrenaline, are released.
Okay.
Norepinephrine acts like a chemical spotlight. It redirects the hippocampus's focus, creating what Mather calls emotional hotspots.
So the spotlight is on the embarrassment itself.
Yes. Instead of encoding the entire scene equally, the brain conserves resources and focuses the heightened attention, the hotspot on the novel, surprising, or most emotionally charged aspect of the event.
Like a sound of the glass breaking.
The sound of the glass breaking, or the surprise silence that followed. The surrounding details, the color of the walls, the weather outside, those stay with that fuzzy global encoding. They fade, while the hotspot remains laser sharp.
That is fantastic. So the brain is actively choosing what to highlight and what to blur out, making the memory inherently biased from the very start.
And this leads to memory distortion, which is a big issue. That strong emotional charge doesn't guarantee accuracy, it guarantees vividness.
Right.
Research shows emotional memories feel overwhelmingly accurate and real, even when they actually aren't.
We trust them implicitly because they were so powerful.
Exactly. The initial emotional flood can exaggerate or distort the details we do save, making the memory look much sharper and the mistake look much worse than it objectively was. It's excellent filing, but flawed data input.
And what about that finding that the emotional tag can spill over and strengthen nearby memories too?
Yes, that's kind of the collateral damage of the hotspot. A strong emotional moment can briefly increase the attentiveness of the memory system, so it strengthens the context that immediately preceded or followed the embarrassing event.
So you might vividly remember the conversation you were having right before you completely mixed up your presentation slides.
Exactly, as if the brain tagged the whole time window as relevant to the failure.
It's all connected in that moment of high chemical activity. So if we understand the chemistry and the bias, the next logical step is to look at the psychology that keeps the memory alive years later.
Right.
Why do we keep mentally punishing ourselves?
This moves us into cognitive biases, and they are incredibly self-reinforcing. First, you have the fundamental negative bias.
That evolutionary wiring we talked about before.
We are inherently designed to weigh negative events more heavily than positive ones. We focus on threats and mistakes because that's historically where the learning was. You know, if 10 people compliment you and one person criticizes you, which comment sticks with you?
Oh, the criticism every single time.
Now, combine that natural bias with the spotlight effect. This is the cognitive bias where we dramatically overestimate the extent to which other people are paying attention to our appearance, our behavior, or our failures.
We assume everyone noticed our specific blunder and is now thinking about it constantly.
Absolutely. The reality is that 5 minutes after your small social stumble, most people have returned to worrying about their own lives, their own errands, their own internal monologue.
Of course.
But because we feel the shame so intensely, the spotlight effect guarantees we inflate the significance of that memory and its impact on everyone else.
And this inflation fuels the vicious cycle of rumination. Why do we constantly replay these painful takes?
Rumination is the key to memory endurance. We don't replay the memory just to reinforce the mistake. Psychologically, the brain is attempting to achieve two things. First, it's seeking a narrative resolution to the uncomfortable emotional tension.
It's trying to solve it.
It's asking, how could I have acted differently? And second, it's a form of rehearsal. The brain is trying to perfect a script for the next time this social scenario arises, a form of protective social learning.
So we replay it to solve the problem, but we actually just strengthen the problem.
Exactly right. Every time we pull that memory out, we don't just access the facts, we re-trigger the emotional response. That sensation of shame and heat returns, which, as we discussed, triggers a small release of those stress chemicals.
Which strengthens the memory pathway even more.
It turns that initial chemically bookmarked event, that little dirt trail, into a fully paved 6-lane highway of perpetual shame. It is self-reinforcement by emotional response, and it's remarkably effective at making memories stick.
So we are hardwired for this painful retention, but knowing the mechanisms gives us some power. What is the takeaway here? Why is this valuable knowledge for someone listening?
I think this knowledge matters because those memories serve a dual useful purpose, even if they feel awful. On the constructive side, they drive social learning.
Right.
They teach us boundaries, etiquette, and emotional intelligence. They help us grow by revealing our vulnerabilities and fears.
But the negative side is that when we let the rumination run wild, it becomes corrosive. It fuels anxiety, guilt, and can severely lower our confidence.
Yes, we have to manage the paved highway before it causes a traffic jam. We need tools to interrupt that cycle. The sources give us 4 really actionable ways to soften the emotional power of the memory.
The first is reframing the narrative.
Yeah. When the memory spontaneously pops up, you consciously interrupt it and tell yourself a revised story. You replace the catastrophe with, a human moment.
So instead of, I am a failure who fell on stage,
You tell yourself, I am a person who had an awkward moment that time and it was over in 30 seconds. You actively reduce the drama.
the second is the classic but powerful strategy of laughing at yourself.
Humor is so essential. Shame thrives on seriousness. If you can introduce levity, if you can tell that embarrassing story at a dinner party and get a shared laugh, you significantly reduce the shame response and disconnect the memory from its original emotional hotspot.
Third, and maybe the most immediate technique for managing that spontaneous flash, is mindfulness.
Yes. When the memory hits you in a quiet moment, don't fight it. Take a deep, conscious breath and anchor yourself in the present. Simply state, that was embarrassing, but it happened in the past. I am safe and okay right now.
That little act of presence cuts the emotional power link.
It really does. And finally, if the memories are so intense or constant that they are impacting daily life, the critical step is to seek professional help.
Absolutely.
Therapy provides the framework and tools like cognitive behavioral therapy to dismantle those cycles of rumination and restructure the cognitive biases that keep the memory paved and reinforced.
This has been incredibly insightful. It turns out we remember these awful moments not because we're uniquely terrible at life, but because our brain's sophisticated but slightly outdated social alarm system is working exactly as it was designed to.
To recap, the amygdala registers the social failure as a threat, the stress hormones provide that chemical bookmark, and our own efforts at analysis rumination fueled by the spotlight effect keep strengthening the pathway. It's a self-perpetuating loop.
And knowing that gain and norepinephrine are actively sharpening only the painful details means we can consciously question the memory's total accuracy when it resurfaces.
And that raises a final point for you to consider. Since strong emotions give these memories such a high priority in the brain, understanding the precise timing of that hormonal tag, that critical moment when the amygdala and hippocampus first connect.
That allows you to intervene much earlier.
Yes. The next time an embarrassing moment happens, how might knowing that the tag is being applied right now help you actively reduce the immediate emotional weight before the memory gets fully paved over? That immediate intervention is the real power of knowing the science.
Now you know embarrassing moments aren't a sign of weakness. It's just your brain doing what it's designed to do, protect you from social danger. But when you understand how the brain works, you can finally calm that voice inside your head and stop replaying those old, awkward moments. So next time your brain tries to remind you of that one moment, just smile. Because now you know how to take control. I'm really glad you spent this time with me in this videocast. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow.